I had the hardest time spelling her name, Luana, when I was young. It's L-U-W-A-N.
Good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to the Museum of Flight. My name is Ron Hobbs. I'm the Public Programs Coordinator here, and we're delighted that you all came out on this day to hear from two of America's astronauts here who helped fly in this big airplane that's sitting in our parking lot. I do have a couple of quick announcements. First of all, if you have anything that will make noise, like your cell phone or anything like that, would you please take a moment to silence it? Your neighbor will very greatly appreciate that. Also, if we do need to leave the theater, there is an exit at the front of the theater up the stairs here. So if anything starts shaking, please proceed calmly to your nearest exit. We have great programs here. If you're not a museum member, you can use today's admission towards becoming a member. And if you attend several of these talks, you will quickly pay for that. Next week we have a couple of fighter aces who flew in World War II for America, another couple of great men that you can hear from next week. And the following week we're going to have 21 helicopters in our parking lot with the American Heroes Air Show. So, but we have a limited amount of time today, so I'd like to get on to today's program. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you astronauts Greg C. Johnson and Michael Foreman.
That's great. Thanks, Ron, for the great introduction. I love the fact that he pointed out that next week there's fighter aces who flew for America. I'm not sure if the fighter aces who flew for Germany or Japan get such a great crowd. But anyway, it's great to be here. And Greg, I will let you lead off.
Okay. Well, as Ron said, we're two astronauts. I was on the Hubble mission. I'm also a West Seattle graduate and a Husky. Mike was on two other missions, 123 and 129. You'll see a little bit about each of those missions, and we'll talk a little bit about the Guppy at the very end, and a little bit about the full fuselage trainer that came out of the Guppy, the part of it coming out. So we'll hold the questions to the end, and let me press with a couple of slides, and we'll talk about the Guppy. And I might add, Mike's got a Twitter account, and I really think you ought to start joining Mike's Twitter account.
Yeah.
He's at Mike_Foreman.
It's actually Foreman_Mike.
Oh, no. I got it. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is a picture of our two crews. My crew on the left, and Mike's 123 crew on the right, and Mike also flew on the 129 mission. And of course, we're in front of the full fuselage trainer, so that's what it's going to look like when you finally get it all put back together. We bring two more loads in the Guppy in July and August, and then they'll put it all together. Hopefully in September, I think. 22nd, so they got a date.
There you go.
This is me in the full fuselage trainer getting into the flight deck. I was a pilot on our Hubble mission, and you kind of see the flight deck controls there. A lot of 2,000 switches or so in the shuttle, and you had to know most of them. So pretty memory intensive flight. Yeah, I'm sorry, go. Yeah, that should be my commander, Scott Altman, in the left seat already suited, and then I was sitting in the right. This is, you can imagine, this is level on the ground, but when you get into the real spaceship, it's vertical, and so getting in your seat in the real spaceship is quite a bit more difficult.
You look so young.
Yeah, nice, Mike. Really nice. Okay, here's a picture of the mid-deck. When you see the full fuselage trainer, it's going to be important for you to recognize that all the faces of the mid-deck and the flight deck can be utilized, so you can eat dinner on the ceiling of the mid-deck. So if you look at it, it's going to look small to you when you see it all put together, but realize that you can use all the faces of the dual fuselage trainer, and it kind of shows the crew members that go uphill in the mid-deck. There's a good picture of just kind of a general pictures of the FFT there. You can kind of see the nose pulled apart and some mouth ducts. And this is, I think that's me in that slide. Mike, do you see yourself, or do you know? Somebody put these together for us, so you kind of all look the same with those.
I was wearing an orange suit.
Yeah. And then one of the things I mentioned yesterday when we arrived was it was very difficult for me to get out the top of the shuttle in an emergency egress situation. Mike's not only bigger, but stronger than me, so it was quite a bit easier for Mike. But anyway,
That might be me in the upper right.
oh, there you go.
Yeah, that looks like my technique.
So it was pretty neat to rappel off the side, but initially you had to get out the top of the trainer, so that was kind of a challenge. So here's a little picture of the journey to the Museum of Flight that we put together. The first thing they did was move, the FFT was in something called the Space Vehicle Mock-Up Facility. It has all of our International Space Station items in it, and then the FFT was there along with some of the shuttle trainers. And so a good picture where they separated the nose, and what we brought up in the Guppy was just the nose. As big as it looks. So that's pretty big, actually. It weighs around 16,000 pounds. And then all the other hardware made the whole load that we brought up around 33,000 pounds. And they had to attach it to a frame, and of course, there's the nose being separated from the fuselage, which is on its way. And there it is going down the street at Houston in the middle of the night on a big truck. And eventually we packed it up with foam in this crate that NASA built. And then we stuck the nose in there for putting it on a loader to put it into the Guppy. There's the nose, the Guppy's nose open so that you can stick the loader inside. And there is the start of loading the Guppy FFT. And I would tell you that at the closest point, it was a little over 12 inches from the walls of the Guppy interior, so it was a pretty big load. And it has a vertical center of gravity. So you didn't want to, our aircraft commander, Dick Clark, didn't really want to overbank the Guppy because if you get it too far over, it's hard to get it back up. So it was a very top-heavy load also. And there's the FFT going inside, eventually in. And that is the nose almost closed. And the nose hinges, and then it's got some bolts that closes it up. And there's our aircraft commander, Dick Clark. Dick is a Navy TPS CFI at the Navy Test Pilot School, and the one who made that perfect landing out front here at the Museum of Flight. So highly qualified. Mike and I are his first officers, so still Guppy pilots in training, so to speak. There's a picture of Mike at the controls. The Guppy is pretty heavy. It's got a big wheel, and so when you fly it, you're using the wheel there in controlling the airplane, and frankly, 1960s kind of controls. Dick took this picture. Dick's an avid photographer, and he got a fisheye lens, so he took this picture of myself on the left and Dick on the right, and a couple flight engineers in the back, looking back as we were flying up from Houston. And there's a picture of the flight engineers, Mike Robinson and Dave Elliott, and one of our mechanics there in the back. So we're all getting ready, and the trip up took around 10 hours or so. We had to stop multiple times because the load was so heavy.
Looks like they're playing Sudoku.
Yeah. And there's the Guppy taking off. You can kind of see the water vapor trails off the propellers there. That's due to the high humidity in Houston. The Guppy is pretty unusual. It takes all 4 engines to get it airborne. Frankly, it's a little unusual to land. It lands extremely flat. The original Guppy landed nose first, and this is the landing gear, which is pretty much nose first there. But anyway, there's the landing. And we did a test flight with the FFT on board before we landed. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who is going to talk about his one 129 mission, right? So, okay.
It's a water. So I won't tell you where I went to school, but the school I went to, we play this other school. We try to beat them in football every year. Usually we do a pretty good job of that. I don't know if there's any West Pointers in here. One kid asked me one day, "Why do you hate the Army?" And I'm like, "I don't really hate the Army. We just try to beat their football team." So this is one of my spacewalks on STS-129. Ray J said, we call him Ray J. I've been on 2 missions. Had the opportunity to do 5 spacewalks between those 2 missions. So I had this written down on my, we call that a checklist that sort of gives us some emergency procedures. If the suit misperforms, we can look in there. But I had a blank page to fill up with some notes, so I put that on there. Go ahead. Am I advancing the slides myself, or is this where we do
The video.
Video's next?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can switch to the video. I'll show you this home movies from STS-129. Any way to dim the lights a little bit, or I don't know if it'll, that's great, yeah. The less you can see me, the better. So, this is our patch from our mission STS-129, my crew members' names all around it. This is Atlantis, Space Shuttle Atlantis out on the launch pad the morning before we launched. This was November of 2009. You've seen us before in these orange suits. We get all dressed up and walk out. Some people will applaud anything. We come out, we get into this little motorhome that's been around for a long time, and take us out to the launch pad. Very quiet place out there in the launch pad right before our shuttle launch. Nobody wants to be anywhere near this thing. It's full of rocket fuel. So you see the 6 of us, and you'll see 7 guys in these white suits that'll help us get strapped in. There's our commander, Charlie Scorch Hobaugh. There's our pilot, Butch Wilmore in the front, me in the back there. This is Leland Melvin in the foreground, Bobby Satcher in the background, and our flight engineer, Randy Bresnick. His wife was about 9 months pregnant.
Firing channels armed. Sound suppression water system activated. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission to build, resupply, and to do research on the International Space Station.
Wild ride. The vehicle weighs 3.5 million pounds. It has 7.5 million pounds of thrust. So when those solid rocket boosters light off, you know you're going somewhere. Just hope it's not Disney World. Those solid rocket boosters burn very violently. They shake the whole vehicle for about 2 minutes, and then their job is done. They come off. We continue the rest of the 8.5 minutes to space under the shuttle's 3 main engines. The solid rocket boosters would come down under parachute. We would reuse those during the shuttle program. As soon as we got to space, we got out the camera, started shooting these movies. There's our commander, again, Scorch, Randy Bresnick and Leland. Somebody's helmet pad was floating here. We had to fire some thrusters to circularize our orbit. That pad came flying back. Randy made a nice catch. Down on the middeck, this is Leland getting changed out of his orange suit. Pretty hectic down there for about 6 hours while we convert this rocket ship into a space vehicle, basically. There's me under some equipment. I like to look good, so here I am cleaning up. That's our destination, International Space Station. Starts out like a bright star, gets bigger and bigger as we get closer and closer. Get up right next to it, the space shuttle looks like the Death Star. It's so big compared to the shuttle. And you can see this is us getting ready to dock there. This is a great picture of Atlantis from the space station. We had about 28,000 pounds of cargo in the back there. We do this flip maneuver so the space station astronauts can take pictures, make sure we didn't have any damage to our tiles during launch. And then both of these vehicles are traveling 17,500 miles an hour. And you'll see here the teamwork to get to docking.
Get ready, Mark. Out the window.
What was when I saw a boat?
Ready with the timer? Ready. Coasting in 18 inches. 9 inches. Ready, 2 inches. Fire. The initial contact got captured.
No free drift yet? Still steady light.
So we get docked, we open the hatches, we float inside the space station. There were 6 astronauts and cosmonauts in the space station, some of whom we hadn't seen for 6 months, so it's like a mini reunion there. Everybody's happy to see each other. We went right to work, and Butch here is giving us a little tour of the space station. We don't have the audio on because Butch is from Middle Tennessee. He wouldn't understand what he was saying. He's got this playing. But this is a Russian segment of the space station, all the compartments attached on that side. And then we'll float forward here. This is through the Russians' kind of junk room. You can see this is the airlock where we're getting ready for the first spacewalk. This is the U.S. laboratory. That's a Belgian astronaut, Frank DeWinter. We just floated past. This is the space toilet there in the middle of the laboratory, right where you want it. Canadian astronaut Bob Thurst there floating past. To our right here is the European laboratory, and to the left, Japanese laboratory. And we float down, don't get claustrophobic. We're going to float down through this tunnel. We're going to come out on a Space Shuttle's middeck again. The cameraman's even confused on which way is up. There's our commander again, Charlie Obaugh, and I watch these videos over and over. I never see him doing any work. Flight deck of Atlantis, controls and displays out the window. You see the space station attached to us. Here we are. We're getting the suits ready for the first spacewalk. You know, I'm not sure why we did it, why we went there. I think it was just to do the spacewalks that I was on. So there's me getting in my suit. Bobby Satcher across from me getting into his suit. We had Butch Wilmore, our pilot, and Nicole Stott inside the airlock with us, helping us get suited up. You want to make sure you get the helmet and everything connected just right. You don't have any leaks in your suit when you're going out in space. So we float out of the airlock, you know, and first thing that strikes you when you're outside there is the great view that you see from outside the vehicle, space station, the Earth going down below you. There's me again with my pose, my Go Navy Beat Army cup checklist. We had this antenna that we were to deliver there, so I'm unbolting the antenna from the sidewall of the payload bay. Bobby Satcher, orthopedic surgeon, on his way over to pick up that antenna. This is from Bobby's helmet camera. Bobby also set a record, took about 376 still pictures with it during the spacewalk. Leland, Melvin, and Butch are inside there. They're controlling Bobby on the end of that robotic arm. So I hand him this antenna. He takes it. I said, please don't hit me with it. And I met him over on the space station side, and we attached it to the space station there. Great reflection of Bobby there in one of the radiators. Randy Bresnick was our quarterback for the spacewalk. He's inside telling us what to do, where to go next, what our procedures are. And like I said, Bobby's an orthopedic surgeon, so we use some of his surgery skills, put him to work to do some maintenance on some of the robotic arms on the space station. The space station has about 7 robotic arms. They need periodic maintenance, just like the Hubble. And so he's doing that. And he said, you know, this grease gun you'll see him using is just like what he would work on your knee with. So anyway, we see he's got a pretty good view there from his perch on the end of that arm, the Earth going by, and here he is, hard at work. Inside, Leland and Butch are looking at Bobby's helmet camera and seeing him, watching him work. This is about 2 days later when Randy and I went out to do the second spacewalk, so we're getting ready to get in the suits there. The second time around, Butch again, you can't even get your pants on by yourself, so he's helping get our pants on, and there was one of us outside there during that spacewalk. They asked us to move this big antenna that was sticking out of the top of the space station because a mission that came up after us had an important piece of equipment that plugged in there, so we disconnected and unplugged that antenna, carried it over to the other side of the space station, and reattached it, plugged it back in on the other side. This is from my helmet camera, looking at Randy in his suit. You can see his safety tether there floating in front of him. And somebody waving to us from inside the space shuttle's back window there. We call these spacewalks, but at the International Space Station, you don't use your legs on the spacewalk. It's all climbing hand over hand. It's like a big set of monkey bars up there that you're just hanging on to for dear life for 6.5 or 7 hours. We don't really move this fast during spacewalk. We don't want to fall off. You know, it's 250 miles down. So we set this up so you can see it coming down, back around the airlock, and here you're going to see the hatch here in a second. That's the hatch. You float back in. They help us get our suits off, and my crewmates always laugh at me for this because Butch has to stand on my legs, hold my arms up, and push down and get me out of the suit, you know. And I always remind my crewmates, you know, it's my big biceps that get caught in the sleeves there, so it actually hurts my shoulder just watching this. But finally, you know, I struggle and get everything out of there, and it's a great suit once you got it on, but it's a pain to get in and out of. And there's the I didn't get a chance to introduce my crew, but Leland Melvin actually played pro football. Leland Melvin is another classmate, astronaut classmate of Greg and I, and he got injured, couldn't play football anymore, so he became an astronaut, so he had a good backup plan.
TCS is good.
This is backing away from the space station. Here's Leland doing a kind of an advanced astronaut trick. You know, we play with our food, we play with water up there. Only thing better is if we could have some of those Swedish fish that stick inside the ball of water after the aquarium. But, you know, he had that to deal with, and this is us coming back. Here you see Leland dropping his checklist. We're starting to feel gravity. It's actually starting to fall a little bit. This is what the commander and pilot see out the front window as we're coming back to Florida. Beautiful sunny day there, the day after Thanksgiving in 2009. Come back, see the landing gear come down at the very last minute. This thing's just a glider coming back, so the landing gear don't come down, you're going to land anyway. And great inset image of how hot the vehicle still is, you know, after re-entry, and we touched down on this 3-mile long runway, which is a really long runway. We still use this drag chute to stop. So that was a quick and dirty home movie from STS-129. That was 11 days. We went around the Earth 171 times for about 4.5 million miles and delivered a bunch of stuff to the space station. So with that, I think back to you, Greg.
Mike, I'm a little dizzy seeing all that.
Yeah, brings back good memories.
Okay, we had a series of ascent on orbit and landing videos that I'm going to show here next. And our mission was to service the Hubble. It was the last mission to service the Hubble. It was originally canceled, and then they added it on with actually Mike and another crew on another space shuttle that would come up and rescue us. So we really appreciate Mike training for that and then not flying. But Hubble was 3 years of training, and it got delayed, but we eventually got, I didn't think we were ever going to fly, but we eventually did fly in May of 2009. There's a picture of the crew, and we basically installed a new camera and a new Cosmic Origin spectrograph, brand new instruments, far better than the old ones, and then did a whole bunch of replacement and repairs to the Hubble. What was unique about this was we actually, our spacewalkers took out circuit cards that were never designed to come out in space, and we pulled off everything that was planned, and it turns out the current administrator of NASA was the person in charge to review the mission to make sure we weren't taking on too much to do. And frankly, it was highly successful anything, and I didn't think we were going to get it done. We did get it done, mainly due to a great team effort with everybody on the crew there. So here's the ascent. We'll turn on the lights. Can we turn the volume?
Lift off of Space Shuttle Trainer.
And we had a major alarm right at liftoff. And we also had another alarm where it looks like the left engine was going to quit, so that was starting to get me a little concerned.
103, 103.
I don't know. It all looks good.
Atlanta, Houston, you are go for orbit hop.
Houston, Atlanta, good word. Go for orbit hop. Thank you.
How you doing? How you doing? Welcome to orbit.
Great to be here, Doug.
How was that ride?
Wild, basically.
Hello, Mike. First day in space. How's it going? First full day. You already had, you left it off yesterday. How you feeling today?
Feeling much better today.
Yeah.
It's a very exciting liftoff.
Yes.
Trip to space. Here we are. Had a little sleep, had a little chow.
That's great.
Doing our work here, getting the airlock ready, go outside to EVAs.
All right.
That's why we're here.
All right. Hey, Drew. How was your first day in space?
It was good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
You were unbelievable, man. You were working like a maniac right from the get-go, like you were born here.
I like this floating in space.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
It's a ride.
Do a flip for your family and friends. Can you do that? Slowly. That's excellent. So this met your expectations?
Exceeded.
Really?
Oh yeah, by far exceeded them.
Well, you're doing great, man.
Thanks, buddy. The ride was, that was some ride.
That was fun, wasn't it? We had a lot of fun during that accident. We didn't do it. So they made songs and screaming and yelling.
Those 3 G's kicking.
Oh, yeah, baby. That was fun, though, wasn't it?
Man.
I'll remember that.
It was awesome.
Okay, so that's the ascent there. We had a major alarm at liftoff, and I really couldn't see what was going on. Everything was shaking. They didn't really warn me that as soon as the solids lift, you really couldn't see anything for a while on the instruments. And then I figured out that alarm was was on the commander's side. It wasn't my problem. I had a whole set of problems on my side that I needed to watch over. But the second alarm looked like it was going to be left engine shutdown. And in the course of about a half a second, I felt like the left engine is going to quit. I'm still going to become an astronaut because you get high enough when you're on the solids. And we're going to do this maneuver back to the Kennedy Space Center that nobody's ever accomplished. So I did all that, and then the ground came up and said it was just a indication. So that's good.
Hardest work guy on the flight deck. You're doing an awesome job with all the photo TV, keeping the orbiter running. Well-deserved break here. Where are you riding right now?
Well, I'm trying to ride from all the way across Australia and then through the Pacific. So that's where I'm riding plane right now for about 30 minutes. And it's going well. I'm making some time at 17,500 miles an hour.
Excellent. You're moving.
Enjoy going around, doing people.
Yes, it's fun. Yes. I don't like being interviewed. No. No comment. How did this one compare? You get tired of coming. Is there anything that is old home about it, or is it still just, the greatest thing for you when you come up here?
You know, I'd say it was the greatest thing, but the fact is, I get really tired of this crew inner.
That wasn't my question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wasn't talking about the career, I was talking about the space flight part of
No,
it.
you never get tired of space flight. I love being up here. As soon as we get to manage and cut off something, I get a big grin on my face. Usually it stays the whole flight, except for some scary moments during the EVA when people have to break off handrails.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, I just love being up here.
No, it's very comfortable. You just get your sleeping bag, you can tie yourself off to the wall, and you just float off to sleep, literally.
Yeah. Best water bed in the world. What about you, man? You ready to come back?
You know, I will miss floating. If I could float around in my house at home, that'd be awesome. It's really easy, makes everything really easy.
Yeah.
You can get everywhere, get to the ceiling,
Yeah.
get to the floor, the top of the wall, and everything.
What about the bruises?
The bruises, yeah, it takes me a couple of days to adjust to the rate that you need to move, and so stopping yourself sometimes involves bruising yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more on the land. See that?
Hardest?
Hopefully you have very pivotal roles in landing. Why don't you tell us about what you're going to do?
I'm going to be watching too.
You're going to be watching Scooter. What are you going to be looking for?
Well, I'm going to be looking to see that all of the milestones that we come around the heading alignment cone and make sure he's on at the 180, the 180 degrees to the runway.
You're talking about the big turn that we made. Before we turn final onto the land, onto the runway.
You can let me fly a little bit, and I'll fly around that cone just a little bit. Yeah, go like that.
All right.
But then I'm going to make sure he's on his altitude, 20 feet out to the runway, and then 90 degrees out from the runway.
Right.
And as he's rolled on final, he's all on altitude.
Right.
Airspeed's right, altitude
Right.
right, we're getting ready to land.
Maybe he's not. You're gonna let him know.
Then I'm gonna get some sugar falls.
All right. Okay. What is sugar called?
Little rise, little up,
All right.
little fast, little slow.
Okay.
You can do it. You're the man.
Tomorrow's a big day for you. You've had all kinds of big days, but is tomorrow kind of the biggest day for you? Very special. And that's because
Land. You know what? A robot doesn't land.
that's right. There's no auto land system here.
People get the land.
Right. You get the land.
I was looking at my notes that they have something like 2,000 dives approaches in that aircraft.
3,000 approaches. And those are all set up for the one you're going to do tomorrow for the illustrator, that one. So there's a lot of practice that goes into this because this is a huge event. You're flying a spaceship, you're going to land it like a glider. Right? It's not, it's only a glider. Right. It doesn't fly very well.
You can't catch any lift.
Right.
Keep coming down all the way.
It's like a brick, right? That's like having a brick coming down with these small wings compared to the size of the ship. And you don't have any engine, which means if you don't like what you see,
That's a big difference. Yeah. Maybe every time I came into the ship, sometimes we'd be moving around or I wouldn't be right.
Yeah.
And they'd say, go around, try again.
Yeah.
When the engine's up, this thing, you know, you're coming down. There's no going around. You're landing.
right. So this is
You want to make sure you got the right stuff underneath you when you touch down.
very, very important. Can't say that I'm going to change my mind
No,
now.
don't go over here or there. No, you're coming down. You got to be in the right spot.
Okay, we'll bring up the lights. So that was the 125.
And what I like about that video, Ray Dave, is the cockpit comm during ascent.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of crews elect not to put that in their public videos because some of the things that are said are not, you know, suitable for public dissemination. But it's neat to see that, to listen to the comms. It brings back great memories to me of, you know, what I was hearing during my two launches too. So, and we had a similar situation. STS-123, my first launch, we had this, you know, mass precaution light, red light going off, and horns, you know, and bells in your headset, and they, you know, you're expecting after the simulators, hundreds of hours in the simulator, that where they're throwing every possible problem at you, that, you know, when you finally get to the real vehicle and launch to space, you won't have anybody throwing malfunctions in there to you. You know, you expect a very smooth, clean ride to space, and then you get that, and you're like, wow, back in the simulator, it's just like a freaking simulator. I wasn't wanting this, you know, on the real day. But
I really wasn't prepared for that, and that's why at the end, at main engine cutoff, I was the ride. You know, honestly, I was really worried about, as soon as we had the two problems, I was honestly worried about anything else going wrong. Because if you lose an engine, for example, initially you'll end up at the Kennedy Space Center, and later on you'll end up in Spain or Africa, and so the problems are fairly severe, and so it was. I was expecting a normal run, and it didn't occur that way.
we don't want to get that.
Yeah.
And I got one more question. Was that Mike Massimino in the MS-1 seat for entry?
It was.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would want Mike Massimino sitting behind me during the entry. That guy looks comic. You know, you saw the guy doing all the video and interviews on there, Mike Massimino, and maybe you guys have seen him. He's been on Big Bang Theory a couple of times. You know, he's kind of a media, you know, darling, but he's a comedian, you know, and sometimes he won't shut up. And you don't always need that when you're trying to land a space vehicle, you know. Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Yeah, I would tell you, when we came back, our mission was just under 14 days due to bad weather at the Kennedy Space Center. And so you normally would suit up, and then they'd wave you off, and you'd get out of your suit. And the commander and the pilot always got in their suits first, so we ended up doing that 3 times. But one of the wave-offs, we stayed in our suits, and Mass just fell asleep behind me. It was like, okay, you ready, Mass? And he's back there sleeping. So anyway, it all worked out when we landed. We did land at the Edwards Air Force Base, and so every space flight is kind of like a functional check flight for the orbiter, and so they don't always go exactly perfect. And you're right, I remember now on 123 that wasn't all perfect either. So it was really great to be on both those missions. And I think that the piece that should come out, it's hard to see it in these videos, is the teamwork that occurs on every space mission. You'll always be friends for life because you're pretty much banked on each other in space, so it's kind of cool. I'm going to switch off to a little bit about the Guppy because you have a Guppy on your ramp there, and so we will talk a little bit about the Guppy, and we will leave a little bit of time to ask questions, so I'll go pretty quickly through this. This is our Super Guppy. It's called NASA 941. There's a little history behind it. The tail and the fuselage, tail and the wings came from the B-29 Super Fortress. And if we have any Guppy experts in the back, and I'm talking wrong, Dick, please say something. But I think I got this roughly right. It also is derived from the C-97 and the KC-97 that also flew, and you can kind of see the front end of our Super Guppy looks a little bit like that. And later on, the Boeing 377 was built after the KC-97, the Stratocruiser. So the very first Guppy was called the Pregnant Guppy, and in fact, Clay Lacey, who took the pictures of the Guppy coming in, was in the right seat of the very first flight of the Pregnant Guppy. So it has quite a history, different set of propellers, a little bit different airframe. The purpose of the Guppy was to move Saturn I, Saturn V parts, and so it was designed for that in the 60s because we had no way to get all the parts back to the Kennedy Space Center. The person who thought up the Guppy on actually a napkin was John M. Conroy, and was the pilot of the first flight. And there is him with Werner von Braun as they were constructing the Guppy. And Werner von Braun said it was literally not possible to do the Apollo missions without having the Guppy there. This is a booster loading of the Saturn IV booster into the Guppy. In this one, the Pregnant Guppy, the fuselage is actually split in half, and later in the Super Guppy, you see the nose actually hinges. I'm wondering if this will work. Nope, I don't know about that. So let me go back a second.
I think that's replayed.
Yeah, that video didn't run. There it is. So there's a quick picture of a Saturn IV booster going into the Guppy and then closing the nose. Obviously sped up. So I think the announcer yesterday said as we flew by, as Dick flew by, a little bit of history. There's definitely some history with the Guppy. I like to say I've never met an airplane I didn't like, and the Guppy meets that expectation. Okay, let me go on. So Aerospace Lines built the Super Guppy. They used it for a while, and eventually NASA got it. And it has the hinged nose. You can see a part going in there. And this is a max airspeed test done at Edwards Air Force Base. And you can see the top was crushed in. So we have a max airspeed of 210. So we don't go any faster than indicated airspeed than that. And then we got the airplane NASA 940, and NASA operated it for lots of space station parts to build the space station and shuttle parts. And then Airbus had 4 of these, and we traded a little barter agreement, and I forgot exactly what we traded for, but we got one of their 4 airplanes for free and flew back from France. So then that is what makes NASA 941 our Super Guppy today. Some of the things we've carried on the Super Guppy is the 747 fuselage, the tail of a B-22, a whole B-22 went in, so that's an Osprey, a Marine Corps utilized airplane. There's the SH-3 helicopter carried on it, a couple of T-38s, just like the one out there, in a unique configuration. And then you can see there the X-24B and HL-10 lifting bodies were carried on the Super Guppy. And the X-38, which never flew, but was designed at the Johnson Space Center. So I think I'm going to end it there, and I would like you to ask the hard questions to Mike. So we'll open up the process.
Wait for a mic to be brought to you. We'd like to get this all recorded. So, are there any questions? Please raise your hand. Just one. Paul, right back there.
Hi. Wonderful lecture. Thanks for the inspirational light that you live in the Space Shuttle. Very funny question. What would happen if you lose grip of the structures that you were holding when you were doing the spacewalk?
Well, we stay tethered to the outside of the space station the entire time. So we have a steel cable on a reel that's attached to the outside of our suit. Before we even go outside of the hatch, before we even disconnect ourselves from inside the airlock, we connect those tethers on the outside so that we remain tethered at all times. And those tethers have, like I said, 85 feet of steel cable, so we can go 85 feet. Unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe the space station is bigger than 85 feet for the spacewalks that we do, so we actually carry an extra one with us on some spacewalks so that we can go further than 85 feet. When you saw me in the airlock there with my cup checklist, I was further than 85 feet. I was on my second safety tether. So we have a protocol that we follow. We always attach something before we unattach something from us to the space station. And the same with our tools. We have all of our tools on our little workstation in front of us on the front of our suits, but they're all tethered to us so that we don't let a tool float away. And as a backup to that safety tether, that 85-foot safety tether, we also have a backpack that we wear, a little jet pack that if your buddy, your spacewalk partner were to disconnect you for some reason, little joke, you actually have a nitrogen-charged backpack that you can use to fly yourself back to the space station. And people say, well, how do you train to fly this backpack? If you ever had to use it, how would you know how to do it? We actually have at NASA Johnson Space Center Houston, we have a virtual reality laboratory. And in this virtual reality lab, they can put you in there, put these goggles on, and all of a sudden you're seeing the outside of the space station. You're on the outside of the space station as if you were a spacewalker. And then they push a button somehow, and it flips you off of the space station. And we wait 30 seconds or so before we turn on our jetpack to give us, the allowable delay time that it would take to, curse for a few seconds, and then, reach back here and pull out this sort of controller and get that thing turned on and then fly yourself back. And so that's how we do that. We're never really too afraid of letting go with both hands because we have all these tethers attaching us. So you're very comfortable to work outside there when you don't have a death grip on the space station.
Make that question here.
This is not really so much a question as I'm comments to it. That I'm Bob Alexander. I'm a docent here at the museum, and I'd like to talk to Greg because I was one of the designers of the Hubble telescope.
Yeah, boy.
And I've been wanting to talk with somebody for years that actually got to use what we did. For those that don't know this, when it was launched, it was the most sophisticated satellite ever built. It's the first satellite to be designed to be maintained by astronauts in orbit. And we had to design all the handrails and all the foot restraint receptacles, all that stuff that went on. And actually, also, I saw the very first flight of the Guppy from Lockheed Missiles in those days. It was at Van Nuys Airport.
Right.
And the Guppy flew out of there. And everybody that worked there went out and stood in a parking lot and watched the Guppy make its first flight. I'd like to talk to you a little bit later if I can about what you know about the Hubble.
You bet.
Thank you for keeping it working.
Yeah.
He means thanks for not breaking it.
Yes.
Paula, you got a question back there? Can you turn on
What did auto mean?
What does auto mean? That's a good question. Let me just, I'm going to just tell a quick story. I'm going to answer your auto question here in a second, but I was asked by an elementary school kid. One kid who was in kindergarten asked me, "Did you see any aliens?" It's a pretty common alien kid question. And I said, no. The other kid asked me, "What would you be doing now if you weren't doing what you're doing now?" or something to that effect. And so I gave him my story, my standard line, which I would either be an auto mechanic or a veterinarian. So anyway, to get back to your basically when you do the roll program, you want to make sure the autopilot is on laterally and in pitch, and so you're making sure it's connected, that the autopilot is essentially on, and that you haven't inadvertently, due to the launch, disconnected the autopilot, and then the vehicle would hold an attitude and it would not go where it's supposed to, so that's making sure the autopilot's on, essentially.
Okay, we have a question here.
How many customers do you have for the Guppy?
We've had a number of customers. Currently now, the United States Navy has been a large group that we've moved at least 15 B-22s for them. And then we get requests for moving large cargo. Lately, we've been moving these parts for the Space Shuttle artifacts, so we'll be moving the nose section, training section to the White Hat Museum. So that's the next 2 more moves up here to Seattle, and then White Hat is what we have in the books right now. I suspect next year we'll be moving some more B-22s for the Navy, and then you just kind of get calls about whether this will fit and not, and then you kind of work through them.
Our next question is back here in the center.
Hi. So your job can, your space, a lot of things can go wrong. What would both either of you do if nothing could fail? So what would you do if you could not fail?
Mike, you've got that one.
Well, the truth is that both Greg and I have wanted to be astronauts for a while, and we both failed at becoming astronauts a number of times. I think Greg got selected on his 3rd time applying to the astronaut program. I got selected on my 8th time, so he failed twice at that. I failed 7 times. So I'm not used to trying to do something where I know I'm not going to fail. I kind of expect that maybe I will fail, but I always have that, feeling that if I do fail, I'll get up and I'll try again. So that's a good hypothetical question. I'm not sure if I would change anything, knowing that I couldn't fail, but it'd be nice.
Got a question right up here.
Good question.
Do you mind, how does training in the water tank compare to the real thing? Did anything surprise you during the spacewalk?
Well, that's a great question. We train to do these spacewalks in the world's largest indoor swimming pool in Houston, Texas. It's 202 feet long, 101 feet wide, and 40 feet deep. And we put on that same white suit that you saw us wearing in the video. We go into the pool. Divers are there to help us, and they make us neutrally buoyant, which means that when we're next to the space station in the water, we don't float up or float down, so it's like we're weightless, like we're in space. But when we flip upside down in the pool, the blood rushes to our head, and that's uncomfortable in space. It doesn't rush to your head. It doesn't matter which way you orient your body in space. You feel very comfortable. And the difference, main difference, I guess, is when we're in the pool, we look down, we see the bottom of the pool, and when in space, we look down, we see the Earth, and so it's a lot better view from space. But the training, I think, is some of the best training that I got as an astronaut was to do the spacewalks. Once I got to space and did my first spacewalk, I felt very comfortable. After hundreds of hours training to do it, I felt like I knew exactly what to expect. And so, if you ask what surprised me, I think I've never been on a spacewalk that went 100% like it was supposed to. So I don't know if that surprises me or not, but things come up, a bolt that you're supposed to turn gets stuck and it won't turn like it's supposed to, or something else needs to be replanned. But like Greg said, these missions, we have this great team that we work with in Houston, in Mission Control, our crew, everybody that supports us. When we have these problems, we have all these smart people, smarter than Greg and I, down here on Earth, that say, hey, try this, and usually they figure out a way for us to fix it right away. So when we have these contingencies, these surprises, we're able to work around pretty quick and get a good solution and make it work. So.
The next question's in the front row.
While we were on the spacewalk, is there any space junk that hit you?
That's a good question. When you're outside of the space station, crawling around there, a lot of the space station is built from aluminum and metal, and you see little pit marks in all the metal. Some you see big pit marks from things that about the size of a grain of sand that come through and hit the outside of the space station. And you think a grain of sand, well, it's going so fast coming from space somewhere, when it hits, it makes a little dent in the space station. And nothing, as far as I know, ever hit me. There were never any damage to my suit that I saw afterwards. I always felt like, big space, little astronaut, try to hit me, it's hard, hopefully. So we never saw, had any damage from debris that hit us. And NASA's pretty good. They track big pieces of space junk. Anything bigger than a baseball, NASA, Air Force tracks it, and they know when it's going to come close to the space station. We can do something about moving the space station for a short amount of time to avoid that. But little tiny piece of sand going really, really super fast. If it hit the suit, hopefully that suit is designed so well that it would just absorb that impact and you wouldn't get hurt. But that's a risk that we take when we do these spacewalks.
We have a question here.
Hi, my name's Andrea Torlin. I'm from Seattle Astronomical Society. I'm also friends of Karen and Gary Don, who I believe you know.
Yes.
And I heard you say on the radio that one of the surprises for you was how bright the sun was when you were in the spaceship or in the space station. Can you also tell us a little bit more about what it was like to view the heavens and the stars from the space station?
Sure, that's a good question. We had, and I'm sure Mike did too, for the rendezvous, they do it at orbital noon, but if it gets delayed or you get too early, you get off that and you can get sun in your eyes. And so we were issued some really, really strong, like Wilder's glasses. And you know how your mom tells you, don't look at the sun? Don't look at the sun in space, because it is just the brightest thing I've ever seen. I don't know what you thought, Mike, but it was just beyond belief. The other thing, because we waved off for a number of days, we got a chance to actually look at the sky quite a bit. Saw the Southern Cross first time. And so what it showed to me was how many more stars there are. It was just beyond belief how many stars when you looked out, how many there were out there. So you really did get to feel that you were pretty small in the cosmos. But you really just couldn't take your eyes off of going to look outside. So when we waved off, we actually watched a movie. We watched the new Star Trek movie that was up late dusk that none of you had seen. But when it got dark out, we would go up and look at the stars, and we'd come back down in the light and watch the movie. And so that was the first day. And the second day we waved off, we watched Apollo 13, because that's kind of what we felt like. So. Good question. I know, Karen.
The next question's here.
Hello, my name is King Wright, and I have a question about a protocol. And that is, like, if there's, say, a fairly serious injury, like, say, somebody breaks their leg or something, and they need to be taken back to the Earth in a timely manner, like, what would be the protocol in a situation like that?
See, I was a crew medical officer for ours, and so there are certain things you can do on board. Certainly you have doctors to help you out if you have to do something immediate action. But it was like appendicitis where you had to deorbit, then you had the ability to pull off a very quick deorbit, and then you were coming back around. to the Earth. You also have the ability to land in different spots, but in general, that would be, the ground would figure it out, we'd execute what they wanted to do. And if it was immediate action on the space shuttle itself, then we had 2 crew medical officers that were medically trained, and then we'd do what we could with help from the ground. Any you want to add, Mike?
Well, you hit it right on the head. I think we would come back if we had a problem. Space station astronauts are up there for 6 months. They ride up in a Soyuz capsule, 3 of them at a time. There's 6 of them there. If someone were to have a medical emergency that they couldn't handle in the space station, they would come back, land, get them to a facility. On my first mission, I'll tell you, Greg said that he was a crew medical officer on his mission. On my first mission, our crew medical officer was a veterinarian. We had a veterinarian astronaut. My second, I pointed out Bobby Satcher on my second mission here. Bobby Satcher is an orthopedic surgeon. So I always felt like on STS-129 I was in a lot better shape, because I had a real doctor. Whereas, on STS-123, if I had a problem, I told Rick, he would usually just touch my nose, say, "You feel fine to me."
You got a question here.
Before your mission, we were very excited, and you do all this training for contingencies. But what are you most nervous or concerned about? Is it the launch, or is it something like letting go of the tool when you're out there, or press conferences?
Yeah, I would say you're nervous about screwing up. I wasn't too nervous on the launch until the launch occurred, and then we had a couple of alarms, and I wouldn't say it's nervous, but now you got the real game face on. You're looking at a lot of screens of data, so that was trying to make sure that all my supply systems were running correctly. I think in orbit, I was very concerned for the spacewalkers that they didn't actually harm bubble, so I thought that was pretty good. And then the landing, when you re-enter, it's difficult to know how you're going to readapt to the force of gravity. Some people do it better, more easily than others. I was surprised how easy that was for me until I got on the ground. And then if you just blew on me, I would have fallen over. And in fact, when we got out at Edwards Air Force Base, there was a bunch of generals because they owned the base, and so you had to shake their hand. And one guy shook my hand, and I was still coming off the ladder, and I literally could have just fallen and tripped and made a big headline. So you just don't want to screw anything up, and there were just so many chances to do that. Everything had to go well, and most of the time you were backed up by another crew member, but there were many times when you would go solo on a procedure. I think the pilot was solo on a lot of stuff going uphill. He had all his procedures, the fuel cells and the APUs. We had somebody behind us looking at the next failure, but the pilot generally had to know his procedures. And then we had the quarterback, the MS2, sitting in between with Mike was the quarterback on 123, maybe? Yeah, so in our case it was Megan. The quarterback had to know all the systems. I told Mike, I only knew my 5 systems, but he had to know the left side too. So it was really a team effort, but you really don't want to look bad. Looking bad is bad.
We have a question here.
The space station, it's mostly made of aluminum. It has a lot of blanket material over some of the compartments so that it protects it better from debris, space debris that might hit. So mostly aluminum, a lot of electrical cables connecting everything together. We use something like Freon. We could actually use ammonia to outside, so there's a lot of ammonia lines running around outside to carry the heat away to the radiators that, we produce heat up there just by living in space, so we need to get rid of that heat or else we'll get hot up there, so we have radiators that radiate the heat to space. And so, I would say most of it's aluminum.
We're only going to have time for a couple more questions. I know you've had your hand up for quite a while, so I'm going to slip over here.
What kind of training or school would you have to go to in order to be able to apply to be an astronaut?
Well, we've had a lot of astronauts in the U.S. space program, and probably no two are exactly alike in what kind of schooling they had. There's no track that is the best educational track to get to become an astronaut. We have engineers, we have scientists, you already heard we have medical doctors, we have veterinarians. We look for people that have science, technical, engineering, math kind of background. So we're looking for the people that understand, how things work, and because when we go to space, we represent a lot of engineers and scientists that are on the ground. And when we work with experiments, we want to be able to understand what they're telling us to do. So we need to have that technical knowledge. So that's the kind of person NASA is looking for. Now, the most important thing, I think, if you want to be successful in any career that you choose, is to figure out what you will like to do. Because any of the adults in this room will tell you that if they like what they're doing, they're probably more successful at it than if they chose that field that they thought, that is something that they should do. My mom wanted me to go to MIT and be a doctor, and Bobby Satcher, this orthopedic surgeon that I've talked about a few times, he went to MIT and became a doctor. Now, he's my mom's favorite astronaut on STS-129. But I think if I would have gone to MIT and become a doctor, I probably wouldn't have been as successful as if I had gone to the Naval Academy and become an engineer and a pilot. So I really like flying airplanes, and I was successful at it. And so NASA, when we applied, looked at our records, and they looked at mine a number of times, and eventually thought, well, let's take a look at this guy. He won't get the message. Let's at least interview him. So you want to be successful. So the trick is to find out what you think you will like doing, because you're much more likely to be successful. If you think that you'll be successful as a lawyer, well, that's great, but NASA may not select you to be an astronaut as a lawyer. I know there's probably lawyers in the room. My father was an attorney, my brother-in-law was an attorney, my uncle was an attorney. A lot of people have asked us to apply attorneys into space. They just don't want us to bring them back. So, something in a technical field. Ray J,
I think,
long on that one already.
I think if you have a passion to do something, you'll really be successful. In my case, I remember my dad taking me to SeaTac Airport, and it had been a 707, and I saw that airplane, and I always wanted to fly airplanes. And my story of MIT goes a little bit like this. I told my dad I wanted to go to MIT, and Dad's here, and so and he said, well, the University of Washington was a good college. And I said, well, then I'd like to fly. And so I got some flying lessons out of him. So you really have to like what you're doing. I have loved being a pilot for all these years. I got a chance to fly with Ken Moore, and I think I was more successful because I really liked to do it. So if you want to be an astronaut, you have to pick something that you like to do, and then you have to do it really well. You have to do it better than your average person around you. So, I think that's kind of the general message.
I think we have one more back here.
What are the recreation activities that you do when you're not working in space?
When we're in space and not working, or when we're down here on Earth waiting to go to space, or I'll tell you that follow up a little bit on Leland Melvin. You saw Leland Melvin catch the football and get tackled in space, and I jokingly said maybe that's why he's not playing in the NFL anymore. But how about this story? Leland Melvin went to school, University of Richmond, and was a star football player for the University of Richmond. But he was also a chemistry major, studied science, got a chemistry degree, but graduated, got drafted by the Detroit Lions in the NFL, went to training camp, was doing really well in training camp. And Leland is also another classmate of Greg and I's at NASA. So we all started together. And Leland got accepted the first time he applied. So Greg and I, neither one of us really liked him, but so Leland's in training camp for the Detroit Lions about this time of year. After he had graduated, he injures his hamstring, pulls a hamstring. They had to cut him because it was time to get the final cut downs. So he got cut. His agent got him to try out with the Toronto Argonauts, so he flew to Toronto to play Canadian football. Got off the plane. About the time he was getting off the plane in Toronto, and Leland's from Virginia, so Toronto was a bit far north of him. His agent calls and says, "Leland, I got your tryout for the Dallas Cowboys." And he said, "I'm getting right back on the plane. I'll be in Dallas in like 20 minutes, you know." He said, "Enough of this Toronto Argonaut stuff." So he goes to Dallas, good tryout, except that he re-injured the same hamstring. At that point, they said, "You know, Leland, you have kind of a problem here. We think you're going to be injured a lot, so we don't think you have a career in the football." So Leland got a job with NASA. He went back to school. He got a master's degree. He's an expert in fiber optics. And like I said, he applied one time in our class and got accepted. So how about that for a backup plan, you know, to become an astronaut? I can't play football, so I'll become an astronaut. But anyway, not all of us are that talented. Some of us are just sort of average. But anyway, that's what you saw there in the video was us, you know, kind of goofing around. Of course, you didn't see me. I don't know when they were playing football. I must have been working because I saw this video after the mission. I'm like, when were you guys playing with the football? You know, I knew we had a football, but I guess they didn't call me out. That's just like when I was a kid growing up, I never got picked for any sports. Anyway, that's kind of stuff, you know, and you guys probably had some fun. You had a lot of extra time up there to spend.
Yeah, we did watch a couple of movies. We did a lot of stargazing. And then we did these stupid crew interviews. Is our whole, our crew decided that we're going to go up and be completely open and honest about whatever and try to do some crew interviews with Mike Massimino, one of our crewmates. And so we went constantly through crew interviews. And I remember, more importantly, we were supposed to testify in front of the Senate. Senator Mikulski they called up and we had a public relations event with Senator Mikulski and so we were doing this stupid crew interview and I looked at my watch and I go, it's like 7 minutes to set up for the senator. Nobody's ever testified in front of Congress, and we're out doing these crew interviews. So we got that out of the way, got the senator just in like within 30 seconds, and the ground was getting antsy. Like, are you set up? Are you ready? And you know, we're off doing this. So we didn't have a lot of time, but when we wake up, we did. So.
Well, I know there are other people who have questions, but I do know that Ray J has got to go out and crank up that T-38 and fly out of here and get back to Houston. So let's give these guys a big hand for what they're doing.